Hi, I'm Heather and I'm a Together Type 1 young leader. At this year's DUKPC in Glasgow, I spoke to Dr. Craig Beall, who's leading a Type 1 Diabetes Grand Challenge research project that explores whether a type of cell found in the brain can help beta cells make more insulin whilst also hiding them from the immune system's attack. Here's what he had to say.
So, Craig, if you could give us a summary in sort of 15-20 seconds, what do you actually do? What is the project that you're working on?
I do the neuroscience of diabetes. It's about as concise as you can do it. So historically my work looked at how the brain senses changes in energy, and actually in diabetes, and particularly type 1 diabetes, the brain does more of the job in detecting changes in blood sugar when the pancreas doesn't work very well. So the brain's pretty important in diabetes, partly because it's largely driven by glucose. Sugar is its main fuel source, so it's got very good mechanisms for sensing changes in glucose.
Okay.
So I study all the mechanisms to do with that.
Yeah, okay. So we know that obviously the pancreas is the main in a normal person, pancreas is the main producer of insulin. When about so we discover that the brain also produces a certain amount of insulin?
That's right. So it's actually been known for some time. Probably in the 70s, researchers found actually lots of insulin in different brain regions, and actually levels much higher than you'd see in plasma. But for many years, people thought that insulin that was found in the brain actually came from the pancreas. And insulin can get into the brain from the pancreas, but more recently, because we've got more sensitive techniques to measure insulin production inside the brain, people have found very specific cell populations, cell types that make insulin. And at the moment there are a number of papers that have all been published in the last 4 or 5 years showing insulin being made by different types of neurons and different types of cells within the brain. So we're really building on the work of others, basically with a very, very simple idea that if insulin is made in the brain, and yet we know that people with type 1 diabetes don't lose lots of brain cells, there's a system that's already working in there that's preventing the immune system from attacking brain cells. So that's the kind of crux of the idea, really, is that if the brain makes lots of insulin, can we harness that biology for better treatments for type 1 diabetes? A really simple idea, complicated to do in practice. But
So is that something that, so obviously a lot of autoimmune conditions are due to the body having a reaction to it. Is that something that we could use for other conditions, or is it something that is specific to diabetes just in terms of the nature of the insulin?
I think it will be something that other autoimmune diseases can harness, and people have tried that in different ways. So there are parts of the body that are what we say immune privileged, so the immune system doesn't really attack them. The brain is one of them. The other one is the placenta, for example. So a baby is essentially a foreign object inside a mother's womb, and the body has a way of switching off the immune system for the placenta, where you've got that boundary between the mother and the baby. So there are probably bits of the biology there that would be useful in other autoimmune diseases, but we'll have to wait and see whether that's the case or not.
Yeah. So do you think this is something that can be then kind of exploited in a way to essentially transplant back into the patient, so at the end of the day, hopefully soon, we won't have to be manually administering boluses and possibly looking at a cell transplant?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ambition at this stage, which is still a little bit away. In our project, it's really just what we say proof of concept. Does it work as a principle? But the idea would be that using the biology of how brain cells can be shielded from the immune system, and using that to cloak the beta cell transplants that go in to keep them nice and healthy. And so really for us, the fact that these cells made insulin was a bit of a flag that said, actually, come and find us, these cells are interesting. And it's actually not just insulin, but the fact that they make lots of other factors, which is what we think will be the most important for the transplant. So it's not just about shielding from the immune system, it's also about improving, when the transplants go in, improving the vascularization. The blood supply is really important.
in a patient with diabetes, we don't really, for a fact, know why the attack on the immune system actually happens in the first place. So would this project be something that is also kind of in a secondary way looking into trying to figure out why that happens, I suppose, because you're looking into cells that are immune to it, so then I suppose maybe that could be compared.
I think that's an interesting question, and there are lots of different things that cause type 1 diabetes, and there are different types of type 1 diabetes that we're starting to understand now. How this project relates to that, I think it's very early to tell, but it might be that, and this is actually quite important though, when it comes to the different types of diabetes and what the triggers actually are, is that you want to treat the right type of type 1 diabetes with the right treatment. And that does vary. Not every type of type 1 diabetes is the same, and you need that bespoke treatment for that person. This might play a role in that, but it's hard to say at this stage.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't know, is that the main ones they know about is type 1, type 2, and maybe gestational. They're not aware of conditions like type 3, 1.5, multiple,
Exactly.
Something that's so specific.
There are a bunch of different clinical conditions that all end up with high blood sugar levels. You could even look at things like acute COVID infections cause blood sugar levels to rise. So there are lots of things that can cause it.
Yeah.
We all just call them diabetes and we group them all together, but actually the bits of biology that are underneath that are all very different, and you need the right kind of treatment to switch things on and off to get the right kind of disease, like blood sugar control and management of the condition.
Yeah, so just kind of sum it up, at the end of the day, what do you think is your aim? What was the aim going into the project of hopefully what it would be, and has that changed now you've started it?
So fortunately the aim hasn't changed. Really the ambition is to find a way that we can hope those stem cell transplants to have no immunosuppression. Because when we talk to people with diabetes, nobody really wants to take immunosuppressants for life.
Yeah.
But people still want a safe and effective therapy that's going to work and it's going to be effective for a long period of time. So that's the ambition. Whether we ultimately mix these cells in with stem cell beta cells, or we harness something about the biology into the stem cell treatments, I'm quite agnostic about what approach we take, because we're just looking for the thing that's going to be the most tractable and the one that's the most acceptable to people as well. And we have to think about how we roll these things out on a big scale, because ultimately, if this is going to be a tiny proportion of people that actually ever get the treatment, it's not really going to be a success, even if lots of people become insulin free and are immunosuppression. We have to find a way where we can treat as many people as possible. So it's got to be something that's feasible and scalable, that can be widely adopted.
Yeah, that's definitely an advantage of the grand challenge, that it isn't just looking at, I want to research this because I find it interesting. It's how can we actually put that into production in the not too long term future.
Exactly, and I think we're very focused on that.
Yeah.
Getting there as quickly as possible. Because I'm really interested in opinions, particularly on young people about stem cell transplants. How would you feel about this as a potential treatment?
I want an insulin pump, so yes, I'm not doing multiple injections a day anymore, but I think when you weigh it up, if you did any type of transplant now, obviously you would have to have immunosuppressants. It's kind of weighing up is immunosuppressants better or staying on insulin treatment? And I think for most diabetics, because we're used to the insulin treatments, and obviously all the long-term effects of immunosuppressants and then the other effects that aren't just to do with diabetes, I think a lot of people at the moment, if you did have to take immunosuppressants, would just choose to stay on insulin because it's what we know and it's comparatively what's easier. I think if there was a way to figure out how to do it without immunosuppressants, then definitely I think people would go for it. Even if it was, in the early stages, you do have to top it up in a way that having a couple of injections a couple of times a year, however many it is still going to be better than changing a pump every 3 days or doing multiple injections a day. That's still going to be better at the end of the day.
With these kind of therapies, what we really want to do is to treat people young so they can essentially live diabetes free. So when you're still perfectly healthy and you're just optimizing your control.
Yeah, I think that's probably why so many of the projects are looking into like newly diagnosed, and almost instead of how do we reverse the condition, how do we pause it in a way and don't even let it get out of the honeymoon phase. I think for me, I would prefer that to happen, because I've lived with diabetes for 4 years now. I've got friends that have lived with it for, getting on for 2 decades, and they're all just like, we know this. This is just normal life for us. Going back to my old life, that would be really odd for me. But I think that would definitely. I mean, obviously we know about all the risk factors and the long-term complications of diabetes. If you do get diagnosed young, which is generally when most people are, there is the risk at the end of the day of amputations, retinopathy, neuropathy, stillbirth and miscarriage. We know all of these things. It's been proven. And it is always in the back of your mind that, yes, no matter how good your control would be, there is a chance of getting this. There is a chance of, like, I've got a friend, she's turned 24 today. She has diabetic retinopathy already because she's been diagnosed. She's 22 years diagnosed, she was 2.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, she's had it for a long, because she's had diabetes for that long, that is just a complication of it, and she couldn't do anything about that. And obviously it's not because of her control, it is just the length of time. So I think that is definitely, initially you might just go, oh, give it to newly diagnosed, they don't even have to experience it.